everyone, this is Anushruti Singh from SME Futures. India's corporate sector needs to invest more to make a comeback for rebalancing the country's economy towards investment and manufacturing. This is a statement from the government's Chief Economic Advisor V. Anant Nageshwaran. His message was clear that corporates needs to invest instead of sitting on funds. Today we have with us Ivy Chin, partner at Inflection Point Ventures, an angel investment platform, to discuss on what trends India is going to witness going ahead in the investment sector. Welcome to you, Ivy. And how would you rate the investment scenario for India in 2023?
I think 2023 has been sort of a little bit of a reset versus the fervor of the previous year. A lot of global events as well as overall I think impact that we've seen. Having said that, perhaps the larger impact is, of course, later stage funding for startups specifically. The concept, the thesis of great founders looking to solve large business problems innovatively continues to be a theme and an area of excitement for investors, particularly angel investors.
So do you think 2024 will be the rosy picture for investments in India, and how is it going to evolve?
I think the story for us continues in the sense that India today, as we stand, from a GDP ranking perspective, is third in the world, right? At a PPP basis and fifth in a nominal basis, is, plus minus, as we say, the largest populated country with a median age of 28, and this 28 will go to maybe 30 in the next few years, which means a young population and therefore huge demand base. 2024, businesses that are catering to solve problems for this population, whether for directly B2C or via B2B businesses, is a huge opportunity. I think politically, infrastructure-wise, given, let's say, results of some of the recent state elections, etc., looks like a very, very promising, exciting year. We are expecting a lot more change and picking up of pace.
You just mentioned about the state government elections. So while the center launches funds for startups, does India stand a chance to emerge as leaders in innovative startups in mining and mineral sectors as well?
Yeah, I think overall we've seen a lot of pivots and shifts, right, in terms of who was catering to various parts of global supply chain, whether it was post-COVID impact or in general policies around China plus one. India is sort of the front runner nominee or candidate, if I may say, to take that place. In a place of where it stands, the point at which it stands. And therefore, mining, minerals, whether we talk about options for new age industries as well, like batteries, etc. So absolutely, I think as we see more, we're looking at evolution even in the startup space. So things in deep tech, space tech are also coming up, and absolutely even then in, let's say, the feeder sectors that will actually be inputs into some of these other sectors.
Do you think that unicorns will return to India in 2024?
Absolutely. I think it's a question. I think till the earlier part of the year, the conversation was there is no unicorn. Zepto came in to sort of make sure that we had one in a year. I think it's a question of what is the business that's setting out to make a difference in the way they do things, or what is it that they're setting out to solve? So yes, that is the case. Of course, in terms of unicorns, it is later stage funding, and as I briefly alluded to earlier, later stage funding has been the one that has seen sort of a bit more of the slowing down versus early stage.
So startups are also acting as asset class for international investors, family offices, and even Bollywood. So how this trend is shaping up in India? What are your comments?
I think, we've seen wealth generation in so many different forms, and while specifically India and it sort of, it has been more traditional, we've seen a lot of evolution. One of the statistics that we love to sort of quote is how underpenetrated even the listed stock market is in India, right? Less than under 5% versus a penetration of 20% plus in US, for example. Having said that, for a lot of the sector, investors that you mentioned particularly, and I would add professionals to that list as well. It's been a lot more of a range of traditional investing assets, whether it be real estate, if you're talking about larger ticket sizes, listed, and then of course, the PFs, FD, and gold. One is for returns. Looking for a differentiated asset class. And I think when we look at startups, there is a sense of engagement in that, which would not necessarily be the case in some of the other traditional assets, and more so for angel investing, where angels are not just providing funds, but looking at participating in the growth, lending, connections, network, advisory, etc., to startups in the early stage. So I think simply there's a huge demand for where further wealth can be generated, a differentiated class where wealth can be generated, and angel investing, startup investing is filling that gap.
So besides from new streams of wealth generation, what are the other trends that you foresee, especially when it comes to investment in tier 2 and tier 3 cities?
Yeah, I think like we've seen a lot of evolution, right? India as a country itself, we in a sense skipped the PC, laptop, mass penetration, and almost just jumped to smartphones, etc. UPIs, if we look at in 2020, we overtook the world in terms of largest number of digital banking transactions at over 25 billion more transactions, way ahead of China as well. So I think simply in terms of demographic, while there is a certain set of businesses that evolved to cater to direct B2C demand, whether it be e-commerce enablers. I think areas around consumption lifestyle will continue to grow, particularly tier 2, tier 3, where there is so much of demand. Keeping that aside, I think indirectly things that affect that, and an area of interest, deep tech, space tech, right? Technologies that will help do things better, access to data, more accurate data, for example, in agriculture, and therefore feeding back on ground, so to speak, are evolutions that we are looking for to start impacting, getting use cases more from out of technology into actual use cases.
So besides talking about newer trends, what are some of the challenges that maybe investment stakeholders are witnessing?
I think challenges, one is, if I look at it from an investor perspective, is how do we get to know about the startups? How do we access them? How do we evaluate them? I think from a founder and startup perspective is how do we get ourselves, because it's not a one size fits all. There is a certain understanding of the ecosystem, there's a certain appetite, and therefore the marrying of the two, the kind of industry, etc., that needs to take place. So the ability, and I think the ecosystem that can feed and mix and match these two. I think in terms of risk appetite, it's clear that we need to understand that this is a risky portfolio, and it's a portfolio-based asset, right? Meaning that it's not all eggs in one basket. It is something that as we learn more about the ecosystem, different industries, we then create a portfolio across startups. And I think for at least angel investments, and as we go to VCs, it's also a question of exits. When the startups grow, what are the next rounds of funding to enable then exit? I think combination of all of these.
Thank you, Ivy, for such an insightful conversation. To summarize, despite seeing few challenges India is witnessing in the investment scenario, there will be a positive sentiments with some of the newer trends that are going to shape in India. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.